Hi everybody out there on Facebook. Here's a little update from the Nations Calling Base here in Poland. I would just like to send a short little greeting and an encouragement to all of you to pray for Europe. Europe today is by far the biggest mission field that we have. Europe is, how to say, really one of the hotspot when it comes to mission today. And of course, that's why we are focusing a lot on Europe. But more specifically, I would like to just share a few words when it comes to how to pray for Europe. Many people have the impression that Europe is closed when it comes to the gospel. But that's not true. Europe is very, very open for the gospel. People in Europe are very open for the supernatural. There is actually a big spiritual hunger in people in Europe. But the challenge is that many of the churches, they have, how to say, lost real spiritual power. So many people in Europe, when they seek spirituality, they don't go to churches, they go to all kind of New Age philosophies. So people in Europe, they are open for the gospel, they are open for the supernatural. And there is a verse in the Gospel of John that actually describes very much the situation in Europe. It says, it's Jesus who's talking, and he says, "Do you not say, there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest." That is the case in Europe. The harvest is ready. There is nothing wrong with the harvest. The harvest has been ready for a long, long time. So how then do we pray? Well, Jesus in the Gospel of Luke actually tells us how to pray for the harvest. In Luke chapter 10 verse 2, it says, "Then he said to them, the harvest truly is great." And here comes the thing. "But the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." In Europe today, the harvest is ready. The harvest is white. The harvest is ready to receive the gospel. There are tens of thousands, millions of people in Europe, I believe, that are ready to receive the gospel. But the thing is that there are no workers. There is a lack of workers. There are many towns. I think they say that it's around 200,000 towns in Europe that doesn't have one single evangelical church. I can guarantee you that in these 200,000 towns that doesn't have a church, there are hundreds, thousands, 10,000s of people that want to be saved, or if they were presented with the gospel, many of them would receive. The challenge is that there are not many people in these towns to present the gospel to these people. I am convinced that if you took one of these towns and moved there and decided that we want to build a church in one of these towns, people will get saved. I am convinced in, how to say, these 200,000 cities, towns where there are no church, if you would pick one of them and just go there, preach the gospel, people would get saved. Because there's nothing wrong with the harvest. The harvest is ready. How do I pray then? Well, we pray as Jesus said, pray for laborers. What Europe needs today are missionaries. More than anything, what Europe needs is people that are willing to go to preach the gospel in these towns and cities where there is no evangelical church. Many of them maybe have one church or a few churches, but still it's very little when it comes to the amount of people living in these towns. So I would like to encourage all of you out there on Facebook to really pray for workers when it comes to Europe. When you pray for Europe, first of all, pray for Europe. That's number one. When you pray, pray that God will send out workers. That's the greatest need when it comes to the gospel in Europe today. The greatest need is people that are willing to go. So I would like to encourage you, pray for Europe, pray that God will send out workers. If you are willing or able to go yourself, then get out of the comfort zone and take a step of faith and go. If you're not able to go yourself, support people that are going. If you're not able to support, well, then pray. Or best of all, do all three of them. But I would just like to encourage all of you. Europe is ready for the gospel. There are hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people in Europe today that are ready to receive the gospel. But what we need workers to go and share the gospel with these people. Paul says in Romans chapter 10, verse 17, I think it is, how can they believe if there is no one who preached to them? He also says in the same chapter that how can anyone go unless there is someone who sends them? So people need to be sent out to preach the gospel. People in Europe, they need to hear the gospel. Europe needs Jesus, but Jesus, he also needs you. He needs you to go to these towns and places in Europe and preach the gospel to them. So for those of you who have joined the, live stream since I started, what I have been sharing about is about praying for Europe. And Jesus, he said that the harvest is ready. There is nothing wrong with the harvest. So what do we do then? We pray for workers, like Jesus said in Luke chapter 10, verse 2, that the harvest is great, but what we need is workers who are willing to go out into the harvest field. So be blessed, be encouraged, and pray for Europe. And if you're able, then join up someplace where you can maybe take a short-term mission team or maybe a few months or whatever. Here in Lublin, we have the possibility, if somebody wants to come for a short time, they can. But just make sure that you are taking part in the Great Commission, because that's a commission that is for all believers. Do your part, pray, and see how God is guiding you. Thank you.